He's actually he's a sausage, so he's grounded up. Pachimari's reincarnated into sausage.
Is this official law?
So I asked Michael Chu about it, and he said he's fine with it. I thought he would say no, but he said it's fine.
Hey guys, welcome to the channel. So what we're going to do today is we've got 2 press conferences here, which I've edited down just to the answers from the devs. There are some very interesting things which get asked here. Things like, how do they develop the game? How do they make the decisions based on what content they're going to work on? Things like, what about role queue? What about the Torbjorn rework? What about... there's a lot of stuff. What about map picks and bans? There is loads of stuff in this. How long does it take to make an animated short? Why are you so slow at making them? Lots of stuff goes on in this video. Watch the whole thing, guys. It will give you a very awesome sort of behind the scenes view from the actual developers on the way Overwatch is designed and built and the way that they give us the new content. Check this out.
I guess, like, I'd like to know, why does it take so long to produce the animated shorts? Like, when did you begin working on the d.va animated short?
So it's funny you asked this question because last year around this time, that's why I started working on d.va. Usually takes about a year. Generally, 9 months to about 12. Depends on the length and how much resource we can develop. Obviously, Blizzard Animation does also cinematic work for other franchise. We have to support the entire Blizzard franchise. So, you know, it just really depends. Usually it's about a year. It takes a while because we went from story development to actually putting in the story script, and then from script to translate to 2D animatics, and 3D, creating all the assets. Even though we can use a lot of the assets from the game team, but we still have to create a lot of the stuff. Animation is a huge time sink because we can't animate everything. There's no motion capture. Any of our animation effects plays a huge role. I thought Ryan Farrell was the big effects budget buster, but it turned out d.va did the same thing. So yeah, I mean, every time we try to push it just a little further to squeeze every single penny out of our budget to make sure that we produce something that's good.
So how far ahead do you plan with the animated shorts? Like, have you got the next 2, I guess you're working on right now, not on one right now, if we're where you should be. So like, do you have like, are you 2 in advance sort of thing, or?
Usually we got a couple cooking in the oven. Some in various stages, and some could be in storyboards, could be in production, some could be just in our heads. You know, like maybe one day we'll make it. It'll be cool if we make one short. Cool. Let's think about it and then talk to the game team. Maybe there's a map that they want to release and we can coordinate.
It's a very similar thing with heroes and maps. I think we have 4 or 5 different heroes in stages of development. We have at least 2 or 3, actually more than that, like maps also. It's just a process that takes some time to get right, because you want to allow enough time to also like make changes as new creative ideas come up during the process. So it's something we're just going to, it's something to work with. Yeah, we're definitely looking for feedback in those areas, and we're making changes to that is something we're definitely looking to. If there's ways that we can improve LFG. LFG is always going to be very tricky for like the really high SR like players, just because there's not that many of them. I know there's like some players that have gone and said like, hey, I'd love to be able to use it, but there's just not enough people looking for actually like footage groups to be able to form them. So that's always going to be a problem. That's going to be difficult to solve. But I think for someone that's more like the mid tiers, we definitely want to make LFG a way to make good competitive groups. Something where it's like, I mean, a lot of this is just about like, hey, finding 5 other people that want to play the same way as you, and have the same goals, so because that way you can just have a much better time when you actually play. So if there's suggestions that the community has, well, if you look at those, I believe one of our other designers is already like looking at making some like improvements in just the UI flow, just to make it a little bit easier, because any tool like that, the harder we make it to use, the less people we get to use, the less people use it, the less useful it is. And we'll definitely look at it. I believe there's still tuning changes to be done in terms of just how easy or hard it is to get to certain levels. We put numbers to all those without knowing exactly how people would end up using, how popular it would be. So I think there's definitely going to be some rounds of adjustments to that. We definitely don't want, if you see someone in endorsement level 5, you should know that that person is a great person to play with. They're good teammates. And if there's too many people at that endorsement level, it definitely loses some of its luster. So we'll look at that. There's some we'll definitely we got to report potentially some bugs, some misunderstandings about how some of that stuff works. Again, we'll keep on adjusting that as needed. Yeah, I don't know if voting more like a map pick ban. I don't know if it's necessarily the best thing for Overwatch as a whole. If there's issues with individual maps, we should be looking to fix those issues, right? We don't want to just have a map that the community feels like, oh, it's crap, and just it goes away. I think if we get to the situation where there's so many maps that you once a month see a particular map and you're like, I don't even remember this map anymore. There might be something where for every competitive season we limit the number of maps that might be in that season to a specific list. It's something like you saw in OWL stages where there's different maps. I don't think we're quite there yet, but it's something that we're keeping an eye on, and I agree, as we add more maps, and we're going to keep on adding more maps because they're really fun to make and add so much to the game that we'll need to adjust as we get there. Okay, thank you. The giving control of whether or not they play specific modes or whether or not they play specific maps or even heroes, potentially is, I think, a bit scarier to us. So we have to be very careful about doing anything that would, potentially that would obsolete any of that kind of content. So it's something, again, we'll never say never, but for right now, I think we're much happier having 2CP. I know there's certainly there's parts of the community that don't particularly like the mode, but we've been trying to, again, improve it. If there's issues with elements of our game, the first reaction from us should be, well, let's just start out. It's hey, well, what's the issue? Let's work with the community, figure out what the issues are, and see if we can improve those. So, all this content that we've made that a lot of people do enjoy could be enjoyed by even more people. All of the reworks we've done have when you talk about Symmetra, that's the most recent one that's a very major rework. We wanted to do that because the community had a very negative opinion of her, and there were definitely some issues with regards to the way that she was actually really strong if you could last long enough to build up to the ult. If she was on defense, there were situations where she was actually really good. She still actually amazingly had a 60% win rate at some point. So, but we saw that there was the issue where, hey, we want to make her better on attack. We want to make her better without requiring a lot of snowballing. And that's a similar kind of thing I think with Torbjorn. So if we see heroes where there's problems that make players not want to play them, or they're very niche, that's when we sort of take a step back, try to see if we can make adjustments, and then make the appropriate ones. I think with this latest patch, you also saw one of the smaller balance adjustments too. We made smaller adjustments to the supports to try to bring them a little bit more in the line. Our balance philosophy has been actually changing over the years as we understand more about our game, and we're continuing to learn more about the game because the meta has definitely changed over the years. The communities, what they expect out of us has changed quite a bit. We've definitely learned a lot of lessons. You look at Mercy and how we handled that. So I think going forward, we'll just continue to look and say, hey, is there an issue with this hero? Does it need to be changed? And if so, we should be afraid to make that particular change. But again, we don't want to necessarily if Winston is a good place and everyone's happy with it, we don't want to necessarily well, let's change something and screw that up. That's not what we want to do. Yeah, it's coming along. I don't think it'll be in the next patch. again, we're definitely trying to make him so where he doesn't require so much of initial success. Like right now, if you play him on defense and you actually win the first couple fights, you've got plenty of armor packs, you've got multiplayer available, and then you actually can really contribute to your team. So we're potentially like we're actually looking at maybe changing his ult completely around, how you deploy the turrets. We've actually been trying a lot of different things with him. Torbjorns always been a very difficult hero to develop because of the nature of his turret and all of his other abilities. So we don't have too much to talk about, but yeah, I mean, we're, again, how you deploy it, looking at the ultimate, so making it so it's not so snowballing. Those are the big things we're looking at.
Thank you guys, it's time that we wrap this up. So thank you Scott, thank you Ben. We'll be moving to the press center for the next session.
Thank you all.
Matt, tell me what being a producer means on Overwatch. What does your job involve? What do you do?
So there's a lot that goes into making a video game, and my primary function is to make sure that creative people like David can spend the bulk of their day doing their craft. So for David, he gets to draw pictures all day, doesn't have to worry about anything else except drawing pictures. Engineer, example, make sure they're writing code all day. Designers, making sure stuff's fun. Like, if those folks aren't doing, just as an example, aren't doing those one of those three things, then they're worrying about something that is not something that is of direct value to the game. So my job is to help make sure that those guys don't have to worry about all the other stuff that comes in planning, scheduling, working through any roadblocks or challenges, but to really just be there as the ultimate support organization to help the developers who are contributing directly to the game every day really show off their mastery. Yeah, so replay system, mass spectate, match history, like all that stuff is kind of highly interrelated in one way or another and really, really complicated. So there's certainly a tremendous amount of we learn building the observer mode, and as we iterate on observer mode for Overwatch League, those tools are not super user-friendly for the end user, and so there's a bunch of work that we want to do before we would even consider putting that kind of stuff into kind of the general player base's hands. But that said, it's a constant balance of different features. Like, do we do an LFG and endorsements versus doing a replay system? And we made the call that LFG and endorsements was probably better for the game right now. But that doesn't mean that our feature team won't be looking at doing other things.
Eventually.
We very much want it. It's just a matter of priority and getting the time to build the system.
Thank you.
I could walk you through the detailed decision-making process on the Overwatch team at length. It's probably not super interesting, except to say that there is a core group of team leads that we sit down every Monday and we talk about what happened on the live service last week, what do we need to have planning for the next patch or the next patch or the next patch. And sometimes we just have to make hard calls about what we think is the right decision. And it's not just design or production making that decision. It really is a cross-discipline group of developers from every discipline that sit down to say, okay, we need to figure out what direction we're going to take the game in over the next 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years. What's our short to medium term plan? What's our long term plan? And sometimes we pivot. Like last fall when we started working through Overwatch team, the Overwatch team, which is Team 4, I'll slip up every once in a while. But the Overwatch team, the Overwatch League last fall was the actual employees in the Overwatch League was very small. And Team 4 helped carry a bunch of the weight and help in terms of team branding and all that stuff. That was a conscious decision where we pivoted dev resources to help make sure Overwatch League was successful instead of perhaps working on a new feature that we could have potentially added to the game. So it's business priorities, it's team priorities, it's community priorities. That's sort of what that high level group of people is that is trying to balance the needs of all those different stakeholders. What do we think is the critically important part of the feature that we need to implement to start to move the needle in terms of whether it was toxicity or whether it was trying to have better games just overall for everybody? We have plans, and I'm not going to go into the details of what those plans are, but we have plans for the walk and the run of that as well. And then it comes back to what we were just talking about, where in the priority list do we decide to say, okay, now it's time to move on to the LFG endorsements walk.
Oh, so that's like one of my first tasks when I joined the Overwatch team. They were building Hanamura and they needed a claw machine, and the claw machine needed a few dolls. And I was thinking to myself, what kind of doll would make it look like an Eastern doll, like an Asian doll, from a Western point of view. And two things, I thought to myself it had to be cute and kind of weird at the same time. So I put like an onion on an octopus, which is cute and weird at the same time. And recently I'm also trying to push his best friend, the Yachimon, the sausage man.
Yeah. He's very cute.
He's actually, he's a sausage. So he's grounded up. Pachimari's reincarnated into sausage.
Is this official law?
So I asked Michael Chu about it, and he said he's fine with it. I thought he would say no, but he said it's fine.
I didn't know that. It's so creepy.
And he's a born again vegetarian because he feels bad for being made up of Pachimari. That's why he carries his favorite food in the leek.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I think, so on the map question, I don't know that any one type is more or less difficult to balance than the other. They all have their challenges. We've I don't know if you guys remember the original Temple of Nubis back in beta before we had the double, it was a single choke with no way through. And we played with that for a long time and it wasn't a problem. And then we realized it was a problem, right? So I think there are a lot of tools that we use. Like we get a tremendous amount of data back from the business intelligence guys who, they're called Global Insights internally, who provide us with just information about, what's happening in different skill brackets across these different maps. And then our designers will periodically look at that data and figure out, okay, we're skewing a little bit further away from 50-50 than we would like on this particular map. And it's never necessarily the same. Usually what ends up happening is when a new map goes out, because there are only problems that show up with a scale, when you have a large scale of ranges of ability, do we start to detect some of the bigger problems in maps where this choke really doesn't feel good, or if you remember back to Horizon original versus Horizon now, like it had some problems. So I don't know that anyone is more or less difficult. They're all their own sort of unique snowflake. And I apologize. What was the second question?
About the role queuing.
I think, like I said, LFG and endorsements were sort of the first toe in the water towards a world queue. I think it's a little premature to jump all the way to world queue. There are some downsides to world queue that we don't need to get into today. That I think there's a grass is always greener sort of argument on some of that stuff. But certainly, if it's something that we think is really important to the health of the game and the community is really excited and wants to do it, and it's certainly something that we'll considering revisiting down the road.
From now, it's going to be like one female, one male, 2 females, 2 males.
We honestly don't think about it that way. To be perfectly candid, what we look at more is heroes can kind of come from 3 places. What's a gameplay need that we have? What's the story beat that we want to kind of get at? Or what's a cool picture that an artist has drawn? It's more about finding what fits for the overall kit of a hero. Like Brigitte's a great example where she just, when we started talking about doing a paladin-like hero, we said, man, it was gender neutral, right? We we were just talking about the kit of it. It was a very gameplay focused thing. I said, who would really work for this? Torbjorn's daughter, Brigitte. That would be Brigitte. I can't even say it right. She would just be awesome for this role. So I think it's very organic how it comes out, and ultimately it's more about what's right for the hero and less about how are we checking boxes in an Excel spreadsheet of how many heroes that we have for a particular role or gender.
Do you keep in mind like we want to make it even?
Not really.
No?
Okay, guys, they have to be at the rehearsals now, so this would be the end of the session. Thank you guys for joining us.
Sure.
And
Thank you.